Have you ever met someone and felt uncomfortable almost instantly, even though they didn't say or do anything wrong? Your body suddenly becomes tense. Your thoughts feel slightly scattered. You become more aware of how you're standing, what you're saying, and how you might look to them. It's strange because logically nothing threatening is happening, and yet something inside you reacts anyway. This reaction can appear within seconds. Sometimes it happens the moment someone walks into a room. Other times it happens while they're simply looking at you or speaking in a calm voice. You might assume the feeling means something about them, but in many cases, the real reason has more to do with how the human brain quickly evaluates people. Your mind constantly scans social environments for signals: confidence, dominance, unpredictability, judgment, or authority. It does this quietly in the background, long before you consciously understand what's happening. When your brain detects certain signals, it can trigger a subtle stress response. Not panic, just a small shift in your internal state that makes you feel slightly guarded. Your breathing changes a little. Your posture tightens, your brain starts paying closer attention. And the surprising part is that this reaction isn't random. It's the result of a psychological process designed to protect you in complex social situations. But the signals that trigger this response are often much more subtle than people realize. The moment you encounter a new person, your brain begins making extremely fast judgments. This happens automatically and often before you have consciously formed an opinion. Researchers sometimes describe this as rapid social assessment. Your mind is trying to answer a few silent questions. Is this person safe? Are they confident? Do they hold more power than I do in this moment? Questions aren't spoken in words inside your head. Instead, your brain uses small cues to estimate the answers. It notices things like posture, tone of voice, eye contact, the speed someone speaks, and even the pauses between their words. None of these signals seem dramatic on their own, but together they form a pattern your brain reacts to very quickly. For example, someone who speaks slowly and confidently while maintaining steady eye contact can unintentionally trigger a sense of evaluation. Your mind may interpret this as someone who is observing or judging you carefully, even if they are simply being attentive. Another signal involves unpredictability. Humans feel more relaxed around people whose behavior is easy to anticipate. When someone acts in a way that is harder to read, perhaps they show little facial expression, or their tone doesn't match what you expect, your brain becomes slightly more alert. This alertness doesn't mean you think the person is dangerous. Instead, it means your mind is increasing its level of attention. Because the situation feels uncertain, there is also a social hierarchy element involved. When someone appears highly confident, authoritative, or emotionally controlled, your brain may automatically compare your own position to theirs. That comparison can create a subtle pressure to present yourself well, which increases self-awareness. Increased self-awareness is one of the fastest ways nervousness appears. Suddenly you start monitoring yourself, the way you speak, how you move your hands, whether you sound intelligent or confident enough. What began as a simple interaction becomes a small performance in your mind. But there is an even deeper reason this reaction can happen so quickly, and it has to do with how the brain stores past social experiences. Another powerful factor behind this reaction is memory. Your brain quietly stores thousands of past social experiences. Every conversation, disagreement, compliment, or uncomfortable interaction leaves a small imprint. Over time, your mind begins to recognize patterns. For instance, if you once had a difficult teacher who spoke in a very controlled tone, your brain may later react when it hears someone with a similar voice. The new person hasn't done anything wrong, but your mind has already connected them with an older experience. This process happens incredibly fast. The brain doesn't replay the old memory in detail. Instead, it reacts to the similar feeling associated with it. The result is a subtle emotional signal: caution, tension, or nervousness. Another element is social prediction. Humans constantly try to predict how interactions will unfold. When you meet someone who seems very observant, very confident, or difficult to read, your brain has fewer clues about what they will do next. And uncertainty tends to increase mental alertness. You may start thinking ahead. What will they ask next? What should I say if they challenge my opinion? Am I coming across clearly? These thoughts often appear automatically. Your mind is trying to prepare responses before they're needed. This mental preparation can create the feeling of nervous energy, even if the conversation itself remains calm. There's also something interesting about highly self-assured people. When someone appears extremely comfortable with themselves, it can indirectly amplify your own self-awareness. You become more conscious of small details, your tone, your posture, even how quickly you answer questions. That heightened awareness can easily feel like anxiety, but the nervousness isn't necessarily about the other person. It's often about the sudden spotlight your brain places on you in that moment. And understanding this leads to an important shift in how you interpret that feeling. The important thing to realize is that nervousness around certain people is not always a warning about them. Often, it's simply a signal that your brain has moved into high awareness mode. In this mode, your mind is paying closer attention to the interaction. It's monitoring social cues, evaluating responses, and trying to predict what might happen next. That extra attention can make you feel tense, even if nothing negative is actually happening. When you understand this, the feeling becomes easier to manage. Instead of interpreting the nervousness as something wrong with you, or something threatening about the other person, you can recognize it as your mind adjusting to a new social situation. Sometimes the person you find intimidating is simply someone whose behavior your brain hasn't fully mapped yet. As the interaction continues and your mind gathers more information, the uncertainty decreases. Once your brain understands the person's patterns, how they speak, how they react, what their intentions seem to be, the alertness usually fades. In other words, familiarity reduces the tension. The next time you feel slightly nervous around someone right away, it may help to pause and observe the reaction instead of judging it. Often that first wave of nervousness isn't a sign that something is wrong. It's simply your brain doing what it has always done, quickly scanning the social environment, trying to understand who you're dealing with. Once that process settles, the interaction usually becomes much more natural than it first appeared.